Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org with a video tutorial for the new Boston. In this example application, we're going to take a look at updating database table values with jQuery. And we're going to be using the same methods that we've used with Ajax, but in this application we're going to make it a little easier for you to update multiple fields at one time, and I'm going to show you and take you through how you would do this. Now, the one thing I have not done in this tutorial is created some kind of PHP code that will actually retrieve the initial values from our database. Now let's take a look first of all at the table that we're going to be using. I've created a database called jQuery, and I have a table called users just in here. And we have first of all a user ID, which is extremely important because if you are updating users' values, they will always have a unique ID, and this is where you will use your where clause in your MySQL query in order to update it. So for example, at the moment the name here is Alex. I'll just go ahead and browse and refresh that so we can see. So that's Alex. This form here, and I've given it just a simple header to make it look a bit more user friendly, is called name. Now, assuming you've created some code that will actually take the value from here based on the user ID, it will input the field data here, so Alex would be written in here. So that's the first thing that you would have to go ahead and do yourself. You'd probably have some kind of system in place if you are updating values to actually retrieve the initial value first. However, if I were to go ahead and modify this, for example, add a surname, and then click save, you can see that we've now got this, your settings have been updated. Now just before that there was a tiny flicker of a loading message that came up. So if you were to say update, if a user was updating a long string of data or several fields at a time with lots of data in, you would have a loading sign come up beforehand, and I'll demonstrate this a bit later when we actually create this. By using the sleep function in PHP to actually pause the script. However, we have this confirmation message, your settings have been updated. Let's go back to our table and click browse, and you can see that where my name was originally Alex, we now have a surname added in as well. So this form here has actually updated this value here, and that's based on a user ID that I've sort of forced to be set, so you'll see that a bit later on anyway. Okay, so essentially what this is doing is actually just updating the database table value based on the fields that we're going to be adding in here. We're just going to be using the name field in this tutorial. However, obviously once you've completed the tutorial and you're comfortable with it, you can go ahead and update multiple fields at a time. Okay, so to begin, let's first of all take a look at the files that we're going to be using in this tutorial. Now the first file is ajax.js. If you've looked at my other example applications in this series, you'll note that we include this in the page as well as jQuery, so we have use of this JavaScript file. All this JavaScript file is going to do is it's going to take the fields that we've created, or the button that we've created, and it's actually going to handle this event and perform the Ajax or the post HTTP request in jQuery. Settings is the file that we're calling from Ajax in order to actually go ahead and update these values here, or this value here, and init.php is going to start our sessions in PHP, so we're going to start the ability to use sessions. We're going to set a current session to 1, the value 1. Remember that corresponds to this here. So essentially what we're doing is we're forcing a session to equal 1. And this is just for the purposes of the tutorial. However, you'll probably have some kind of registration and login system in place. If you don't, you can follow along by forcing this value. Otherwise, you can use the session data that you've already have in place on your website. The third thing that this is going to do is connect to our MySQL server, and then select the jQuery database. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and build the front end of this, and this is the page where we have the form field and the button to update. So I'm first of all going to create a h3 tag, and I'm just going to give this a name of settings, or a title of settings. I'm then going to go ahead and create the name label, and as well as that the input field as well. Let's just surround these in paragraph tags. The ID of this is going to just be name, and we also need a button a bit further down. So the type is button, the value is going to be save, and the ID is going to be save_button. Now we also need a span as well, which is going to handle the information that's fed back. So we need a span element, and the ID of this is going to be save_status. So this will either show the loading text, which we're going to talk about a bit later. It's either going to show successfully updated or could not update your settings, for example if the query fails for any reason.